What's one mistake you see recruits make in this process, and how can they avoid it?
I'd say one of the biggest mistakes. So I'll start with the initial reaching out to coaches, and this is a big one for me. When you're communicating to a school or to a coach, do not use the generic "Hey coaches." We can definitely tell when you're shooting that out and you're just kind of sending it to 100 different coaches. Make sure you're putting the name of who it is you're communicating to on that actual email. I think that is one of the easiest ways for me to dismiss a ton of emails, because I know, like, okay, he just shot that to 100 different schools. So that's number one. I would tell kids, make sure that when you're reaching out and you're communicating, to definitely do that. The other thing too is when you are reaching out, make it easy, right? Put your film on there. Make sure you're putting your coach's contact information on there. And if it's somebody that worked with you through the summer, because not every kid is playing summer ball, put somebody on there that knows you, that can speak well about you. I think those are definitely some things that the kids and the recruits can do. The other thing too is just to communicate.
Welcome to the Recruiting Assist, brought to you by Net Results Recruiting. My name is Matt Bright, Regional Director for Basketball for Net Results. Joining us, as always, is our president and founder, Steve Schaefer. What's going on, Coacher?
Coach, how are we doing tonight?
Doing great. We got probably, well, our bias is going to show tonight, probably our favorite topic to talk about, D3 basketball tonight.
Yes. Yeah, we have a lot of experience in this department. You and I do, Coach, and so we're excited to talk about D3 recruiting and D3 basketball. And we have two very special guests on with us tonight, Bridgette Reyes and Uriah Hunter. I'm going to introduce Bridgette first. Bridgette, Coach Bright, Coach Reyes was a player. I can tell you that. She, looking at her biography, man, she was. I don't know if we're going to have a better player on our podcast than her, but Coach Reyes played at both the Division I and NAI levels during her collegiate career at Boise State and Vanguard University of Southern California. She helped lead Vanguard to an NAI national title and was named Co-National Player of the Year at the NAI level. Her coaching background is extensive, having coached at multiple levels across the country. Coach Reyes has coached at Vanguard, Cal State Dominguez Hills, Loyola Marymount, spent 3 years as a head coach at the high school level and had a tremendous success, was the head coach at Caltech for 5 seasons, and just finished her 3rd season at Clark. Coach Reyes, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
One day we're going to have to play one-on-one, Coach. I'm sure you're going to win, though. So,
Your only hope is horse. Your only hope is horse.
Yeah, horse. That's true. That's true. We also have Coach Hunter with us tonight. Coach Hunter just finished his 2nd year at Hardin Baylor. Before UMHB, Coach Hunter spent 20 years on active duty in the United States Army as a logistics warrant officer, retiring in 2023. He served various tours in Qatar, Kuwait, and South Korea, with combat deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. Coach is a recipient of the Bronze Star Medal and 5 Merit Service Medals. While serving in the Armed Forces, Coach Hunter spent several years coaching basketball at Fort Hood, the All-Army women's basketball team, and the USAG Area 4 men's team in South Korea, where he enjoyed a lot of success. Coach, we thank you very much for your service and are excited to have you on the show tonight.
Fellas, thank you, man. I'm glad to be here with you guys.
Coach Hunter doesn't look old enough to be retired from anything except for elementary school. So, I mean, thank you for your service, but there's no way you're retired from anything, Coach. So,
Appreciate
so I'm gonna kick us off. Bridgette, we'll start with you. Can you walk us through the typical recruiting process for a Division III player? And I know you've been like, we'll keep Caltech out of it because that's a different animal altogether. But for a normal Division III student athlete.
Yeah, I think the first thing that we look at as coaches is their academic transcript and portfolio and what that GPA looks like. That's really important to the balance of Division III athletics and academics. Even better if they know exactly what they want to study, what they want to major in, they have some direction. They have kind of, intangibles that they're looking for in a school. We love when student athletes know what they want. That's fantastic. And then, you know, as far as the process goes, we recruit both, you know, at tournaments, in person. We find kids on Twitter, on NCSA, and recruiting things. And when Steve texts me, you know, we look all over for student athletes that fit the mold of our program, and we recruit nationwide too. We focus on, you know, the very next class, which is always like the junior class and above. That's kind of our bandwidth that we have with the staff that we have. So we recruit juniors and seniors very hard. And yeah, the timeline for Division III is, you know, there's always application deadlines and financial aid deadlines that we have to be aware of. So it's not a, you know, get any at any time. So we have to be very strategic on how we recruit and the timeline process and communicate that with the kids as well.
Awesome. Coach Hunter?
No, so definitely. So echoing a lot of the things Coach Reyes said, for us, it starts in the summer of that junior year. That's when we get serious about getting out to some of the summer events, watching them play, getting out to some of the practices to watch them practice during the summer. And then that translates into the high school season. Once they get into the high school season, then we can make it out to their practices to see what they look like at their high school. There's a lot of communication going back and forth between, I'm at this event, I'm moving here. So that communication between us and the recruits that we're looking at is big. Once we go from the high school piece, we may get them out to a visit. That visit could start in the junior year, but we typically like to bring them out in that senior year. Once we get them out in that senior year, then we know they're getting pretty close to making a decision. We like to get them out to a practice, get them out to a game. We'll get them in front of our head coach. They can ask a ton of questions, them, the family. But the biggest thing for us when we're looking at recruits, number one is we're looking at really good kids. We want GPA has to be at minimum of 3. We can take kids lower than a 3. The problem is you're going to end up spending a lot of money. So we typically try to recruit kids that have at minimum a 3.0 GPA. From there, again, like Coach Reyes said, we're looking to see, do you have the degree plan? And then you're also recruiting us too. Are we a really good fit? And that's why we have them come watch practice, come to a game. When they're at a game, we don't want them to just sit in the stands. Come down in the locker room. You can hear Coach speak. You can hear how he talks to the players. You can hear the culture and how we do business in that locker room. So that's part of the recruitment process and how we do it with the players that we're looking at.
That's great. And Coach Hunter, when you're at a game, whether it's a high school game or a live period event in the spring or summer, what are some things you're looking for in a potential recruit, you know, athletically, when you're identifying a prospect?
So for our players, I think a lot of times players associate being able to dunk the basketball as athleticism. And I learned this when I was coaching our women players. I used to scream to them all the time, be athletic, be athletic. And they would say, Coach, that they'd always associate it with dunking. To me, it's not. It's taking advantage of how many dribbles can you take, the least amount of dribbles between you crossing half and maybe getting to the rim. Are you over dribbling? How are you utilizing your athleticism in terms of playing defense? Those same amount of steps that it takes you to go and dunk the basketball, are you using that to impact the game on the defensive end? So when we're looking at athleticism, I'm not just looking at, can this kid go and grab the basketball and go and dunk it? I'm looking to see, are you using that athleticism in other areas on the court? Typically for us, it's usually pretty easy to identify really talented, skilled players that can score, but it's those others, right? Those players that are going to be on the court, that are impacting the game defensively, rebounding, running the floor really hard, setting really good screens. I think there's a lot of different ways you can identify athleticism. And for me, those are some of the things I look at, not just so much as jumping and dunking the basketball.
Sure. And Coach Reyes, on the women's side, you know, when you're at an event or a game, you know, what are you looking for a kid that's going to fit into Clark?
I would love a high IQ kid, someone that makes great decisions. You know, whatever a great shot is for them or for their teammates, setting them up. Someone who plays on both ends of the floor equally as hard, both offense and defense. And like Uriah said, you know, if they're athletic, great, using that to their advantage and getting tips and being long and getting pressure. And then on the flip side, if you're not as athletic, that's okay too, but really using your high IQ to get a quick first step or, you know, to play equally on the court. Because I think you can have both things. And I think at the Division III level, you know, we're recruiting smart kids. So, them using their smarts on the court and high IQ decision making is good, and then just tough and gritty. I want tough kids who are communicating on the court at all times and pesky. I think that does stand out.
Great. Love that.
Absolutely. And then as far as we'll stay with communication, Bridgette, with you, when should high school athletes start reaching out to you? What kind of timeline are they looking at, and what are they looking to include in that initial communication with you if they're interested in Clark?
Yeah, I think, summer going into their junior year, I think all the AAU tournaments or, viewing tournaments, showcases, anything that they'll be around. I love when kids tell me, hey, I actually scheduled a campus tour. Will you be on campus? I'm like, great. That's even better. So they should be including, their name, their information, what high school, what AAU program, what they want to study, their GPA, and then always some sort of film that we can evaluate them, and then, make contacts after that.
Okay. Coach Hunter, same thing. When should they reach out to you at Mary Hardin Baylor?
So very similar. That summer of that junior year is best to start communicating then. But I'll also put another nugget in here. This will probably help a lot of recruits out. When you're reaching out and communicating to any coach, make sure you're using that coach's name. Don't just hit the head coach. Make sure you're reaching out to the assistant coach. If there's multiple assistant coaches, hit every last one of those assistant coaches, and make sure you're talking to everybody. The other thing too is when you are reaching out, it may even help if you have your coach reach out on your behalf. If it's a school you're really interested in, a lot of times as coaches, when we see another coach reaching out, we understand developing that relationship. And we do get flooded with a lot of emails from kids. But I think when we see a coach, whether it's a head coach or an assistant coach, we understand relationships. And I think that helps a lot. So I think that's something that would definitely help a lot of kids in terms of when I'm reaching out, I'm showing I'm serious about this. When that coach reaches out, it carries a little bit more weight than just the student himself or that athlete just reaching out on their own.
No, that's great of including assistants, because as we tell our kids in net results, some programs, the head coach is completely hands off for recruiting. Other ones, they're the only one that does it, and they keep their assistants out. So that's great to, kind of cover all your bases.
Yeah, Coach Reyes, since Division III schools don't technically offer athletic scholarship, can you tell our audience, because we get these questions all the time, and we just want to make sure they hear it from active coaches, what financial aid and merit-based scholarships are available for students at the Division III level?
Yeah, every school is different. Ours specifically gives academic merit scholarships ranging from about $21,000 to $32,000. On top of that, we give regional grants to kids from different states, and we'll give them $5,000 every year just for being from California, Texas, Oregon, states like that. They'll just pick states each year, depending on what the need is for the school. And then after that, they're going to be looking at the FAFSA, the CSS Profile, and determining packages. I think we give generous packages. I think families have to realize it is an investment, right? It's never going to be free. And the value of free isn't always the best value, right? And so I think we have to really understand the investment of a great education and a great experience. So that's kind of what we're looking at. And then we also offer a free 5th-year master's degree for student athletes or students in general. So, yeah.
Yeah, great. And Coach Hunter, how does it work at Mary Hardin Baylor?
So very similar. And this kind of goes back to the original point where you asked about what type of kids we're looking for. That GPA really comes into effect here. So we have about 5 tiers of scholarships at Mary Hardin Baylor, and ours range anywhere from $5,000 to 18, and it's all based on your academics. So your GPA, your SAT scores, your ACT scores, those are going to drive what you're receiving. Where your class rank is, that's going to help you out. Your SAT score doesn't hurt you, but it will help you. And that's one of the things for us. We really push to make sure that we're going after kids that have a decent GPA, and a decent GPA is a 3.0 for us. Outside of that, and this is before you even look at any financial aid, we also have a visitation scholarship that we're also throwing on now. So if you are reaching out to a school, they may have specific scholarships where they're, trying to get their recruitment up or their numbers up just with the school. And that's something we're doing right now. So by 1 May, all of the kids that are coming to us, they're receiving $3,000 a year just for visiting the campus before 1 May. And that's before you even start looking at any financial aid or any additional assistance you can receive.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. And Coach Reyes, I mean, as you've coached at the highest high academic schools, not all schools offer academic scholarships. Can you kind of walk our audience through a school like Caltech and how they handle, financial aid and paying for college at a school like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And all I know is the Caltech model. I don't know MIT's, or I don't know other STEM schools, but at Caltech, there were no academic scholarships. In order to get into the school, you had to be the brightest of the bright. I mean, I brought student athletes to them that got denied that were still the brightest of the bright. And, the class is about 220, and, 100 of those are women. So there just isn't enough room and opportunity for everyone to get in. So, the school was what it was, and there were no scholarships, and you either, were either qualified for need-based aid or you didn't, and you had to pay the full amount. And there was no other scholarship offers there.
Yeah. I talked to a high academics coach a month ago, and he was really recruiting one of my prospects very hard, and he kept telling me, well, he gets his scholarship after he graduates, and you do at schools like that. I mean, you get a degree from Caltech, you're going to be set up pretty well for the rest of your life. So and we had a kid a year ago that had a 4.0 and a 36 that did not get into Caltech. So when you talk about the brightest of the bright, you got to separate yourself, and sometimes that's not transcript and test scores. So and they don't need to offer academic money, correct, Coach? Because everybody there is really, really smart, and they're banging down the doors to get in. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Yeah, I remember when we came out there and played when I was coaching, and my guys were saying some stuff about the players, and I was like, we'll see what their paycheck is at 25, and we'll compare it to yours. We'll see. I was like, we walked by the aerospace engineering building. I go, I promise that's the best in the world. I promise it is. Fompon, we didn't have the best of anything in the world. But that was my I was like, these guys, you can call whatever they want. They're going to make way more money than you ever could dream of. So, Uriah, how can you help kids through the process? How can you help navigate them the financial aid? Being a coach, what advice can you give them, or how can you help them through the process and the families?
So this is a conversation that, when we do bring them down to the school, our admissions office, they like to separate us from this process. Now, we do understand the process and how it works. So we have an admissions team that'll bring the kids in. They'll talk to the families and kind of explain to them, hey, this is, I call it that sticker price, right? So they'll go over everything that the school has to offer. And then once they come out of that room, we get hit with 1,000,001 questions about, hey, what other things can I do to kind of help myself out here? Really, the furthest that our school really allows us to really go with that is just kind of explaining the model of, hey, this is where we are. Here's the baseline. What we do tell the kids is, we understand, yes, this is the price that we're starting with. Your grades are going to help you out. Where you can help yourself is if you're in your junior year, you can get really good grades to benefit yourself when you are coming back as a senior. We do have really good retention scholarships. So when we do get the kids in and they have been in the program, their grades and how they perform each year is going to help them out as well. But in terms of being able to kind of navigate and talk anything financial aid, our school likes us to be hands-off, and they refer us to NCAA compliance just to kind of let us know, hey, listen, there's very minimal we want you guys dealing with here, so we can kind of separate the two.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Bridgette, same to you.
Yeah, I would say, the great thing about sport coaches in general is we are fundraisers, we're a marketing team, we're admissions team, we're all the things. And so I think, our role extends to that area without getting too much into that area. So I think they're very welcome and appreciative of all the student athletes we bring to them, and they want them on campus tours, and they're so excited to have them on campus, and they take over a lot of the communication parts, send them emails and stuff. And, I have stopped, guessing how much academic scholarship each student athlete is going to get, because I can look at a transcript and be like, oh man, that must be or I take their word for it, and they say, oh, I got a 3.8, and then you look at the thing and it says 3.1. You're like, Okay, that's okay. So, I don't guess on that stuff. I just say, hey, you'll have to see this is where our scholarship range is. You can bank on this regional grant if you're from one of those states. And then we'll have to see after the FAFSA and CSS profile. And I've found too, the CSS profile was really, for us, our use of it was because the FAFSA was not ready, the new one. And we couldn't give packages without that. And I think the CSS profile is even more detailed than the FAFSA. So our admissions team is sticking with that, and getting student athletes to fill out an extra thing is a challenge, as you know. So we just really have to be on them, and they have to be very organized, getting, the application in, the FAFSA completed, and the CSS profile done.
So Bridgette, for Steve fires his, this year, was the FAFSA better on your guys' end?
It was, but I think that our admissions and financial aid team didn't want to take another chance, and they just said, we know we can rely on the CSS profile, and we are going to continue to use that. It's been reliable for us, and it might just have to be an extra step for the student athletes, but if that's like the tried and true method that they can rely on, then they're going to stick with that.
Uriah, what about you guys? Was FAFSA better this year?
Yes, it was a lot better. Last year, it just looked like it took forever just to kind of get all of the kids through the system. And, we're kind of in this waiting game of, okay, are the kids going to get, everything they need? This is really, pending the decision from the kids too, right? Because for some of them, if they don't get that financial aid conversation going, or at least get that back, then we don't know if we're actually going to get these kids. So it took forever for it to happen last year. And it's been a lot better though, for sure.
Okay. I mean, I don't think it could have got worse, but
Yeah.
It was so bad last year with those kids, and Steve and I in our role helped. Like there wasn't anything anybody could do. Everybody was sitting there, twiddling their thumbs, waiting for the government to figure it out. So,
And my next question, Coach Reyes, I think most of our audience knows what the FAFSA is, the free application for federal student aid. Can you kind of talk to them about what the CSS profile is? Because I don't think a lot of our parents know what that is.
Yeah, to be honest, I barely know what it is. No, I never had to fill that out when I was a student athlete, but it is essentially a more in-depth and detailed form, such as the FAFSA. It asks for more information. So it's like, once you fill out the CSS profile, the FAFSA is easier because the CSS is so detailed. And so they feel so strongly about being able to give a financial package estimate based on that document, even more so from the FAFSA. And then when the FAFSA is ready, they have to just fill that out just to kind of make sure it all lines up, and they're good to go.
And so obviously the FAFSA is a government form. Is the CSS profile an institutional form or a government form?
It's not an institutional. There are many institutions that use it. It's just selected. Yeah.
Gotcha. Great. And you've already answered this, Coach Hunter. But I do want to ask this to you, Coach Reyes. What are the for Clark? Because I think I consider Clark a high academic school. What are the benchmarks or minimum GPA or test scores that are required for you to even be able to talk to a recruit? Because obviously, Coach Hunter, you said a 3.0, right? It's kind of your benchmark.
So we put that on our kids as a team, but we can accept GPAs that are lower. The problem is you're going to put yourself in a position where your family is paying a lot more money. So we try to put that mark there. It's a culture thing for us in terms of bringing in kids with 3.0 GPAs.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, absolutely. Coach Reyes, what is it for you?
Yeah, I think we prefer to have student athletes with, 3.3s and above. That doesn't mean we can't get 3.0 GPAs in, but same thing like Coach Hunter said, our team GPA last semester was a 3.79. We're talking top of the country, and I'd like to continue that. And I'd like to continue to say that to parents and to student athletes, because we want driven student athletes. We don't have to mandate study hall. They take care of it on their own. They take care of business. So I want to continue to be able to say that and be proud of that as an accomplishment off the court. So although there's, GPAs we prefer, I would prefer, more towards the middle of the 3.3, 3.5.
Great.
Coach Reyes, I want to piggyback off of that. What if it's a kid from I know every state's different, but a 1A, 2A, 3A, a smaller school, and they're coming in with a 4.0 versus a kid at a 6A school who has a 3.5, right? That kid at the 1, 2, 3A school, they might not have the rigor, or the AP offerings, or is there any factor in that when you're looking at those kids?
Yeah, I think like everything is a holistic review of their application, and that's extracurriculars, and that's extra responsibilities, and that's the rigor that the school even offers. All that is taken into accounted for. And I feel really good about both those kids and their ability to learn. I feel good about kids that, even have, even if they have a learning disability or this or that, we have resources for that on campus. So I feel good that if a student athlete is driven and wants to be successful, whether they're, struggling in one area or one class, like they can still be successful at the collegiate level. They just have to want it.
Uriah, same to you. What about a kid from a small school versus a kid at a big school? The GPA difference, the smaller school kids get a higher GPA. What do you guys do at Mary Hardin Baylor for that?
Yeah, so I'll be honest, that class rank is based off of your class size. So if you're coming from a private school or a smaller school, you do have an advantage and a benefit there. Our kids that are in those bigger 5A and 6A schools, I'll be honest with you, I don't know the last time we recruited a 5A or 6A student. Honestly, they just don't really do well at our school. And sometimes that's just because of the size. Sometimes their high schools are bigger than our college, and they just don't do well. But in terms of the class rank, your class rank, it's based on the type of school or the size of the school that you're at. And yes, our kids that are from smaller schools have a better chance of getting better scholarships just because of the size of their school. I did want to cover one thing. I would kick myself if I didn't touch this, but I know you guys had asked a question before about what other benefits do we have. So obviously with me being military, one of the first things that I did look at Mary Hardin Baylor was, do we have anything for dependents or military that comes in? And we do. We offer GI Bill, Yellow Ribbon. We offer a lot of different benefits for our GI Bill and military students that are coming over, or dependents that are coming over. So that's another area where I think we've been able to help a lot of our students out. I know a lot of people don't ask that question about, hey, what other benefits do you have for veterans? But that is another area where we can also help too.
That's great.
Well, now that you've got a kid on campus and they're a part of your program, what does a typical day or week look like in season and out of season? Uriah, we'll start with you.
No, definitely. So we break the season up into, we call it 3 seasons, right? So that preseason for us is we get them in August, and our timeline is maybe a little different from everyone else. So the first week of August is when we start. We typically don't touch our students until October. So our athletic trainer and our strength and conditioning coach is spending the most time with them. So once we get them in, we talk to the team, they are immediately jumping into conditioning, and those guys are going 4 times a week. We typically try to stay away from Fridays, and then they are starting to do work with the athletic trainer. And we have a great athletic trainer. He does a lot of prehab work with our students, and they're doing that 3 times a week. So they're doing a lot of that all the way up until October 15th. Now at the Division III level, they give us 8 practices that we can do prior to October 15th. You can break that up any way you want. We typically just start practice 8 days before October 15th. And then once we get in season, instead of these guys having open gym, we basically replace open gym with doing practice. So they'll keep the prehab work, they'll keep the conditioning with the strength coach. We do individual shooting groups with them for skill and development. And then we also add practice in. That's what's happening during season. And then in the off season, it's kind of a repeat of what we did in the preseason.
Bridgette, what about your ladies at Clark?
Yeah, similar. They get on campus in late August, and then I actually use one of my 8 practices that we can use to do some structure and then watch them play. Kind of like a controlled open gym. I want to see what they did all summer, and I do it early so they don't have time to get to school and get in shape in the nicest way. I want to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing in summer. And then same thing, they're going to go with the strength and conditioning coach 3 days a week, and then continue the open gym and skill work on their own until we get to October, so late September, and use either 2 practices a week or 3 practices a week until we get into 6 days a week. We continue lifting throughout the whole season, and then in the off season, same thing. They go back to strength and conditioning and doing their own workouts we do skill workouts as often as we can with them. If they're accountable practices, we're doing skill workouts outside practice, and then we expect them to make 100 made shots outside of practice as well on their own time.
That's great. I mean, at the Division III level, there's a huge emphasis on student athletes, student first. We all know that. At the Division I level, we can see that it's becoming a business in a lot of different ways and things of that nature. But I still feel like the Division III level is the purest level of student athlete. And so with that said, I think it's important for our audience and these kids understand the kind of support that they can get on campuses academically while being a student athlete at a small college. So, Coach Hunter, what kind of academic support or resources do athletes have access to at Mary Hardin Baylor?
No, definitely.
Whether it be in season or out of season. Yeah.
No, definitely. So we have a Student Success Center. I like to call it our library without books. And at the Student Success Center, they can basically go in there and get a 24-hour tutor. We use this especially for our young freshmen. We don't do any study hall with any of the players. We just don't feel like anything will get done there. So what we do is we put a stipulation on our young guys when they come through first semester. They've got to get over to the Student Success Center to be able to do at least maybe an hour or a few hours a week. I don't put a timeline on them. Typically, if they go over there, they're removing distractions. But that helps out a lot to where they can actually go over there and focus on working on their academics without having any distractions around them. The next thing that we do is I do wellness checks and academic check-ins with all of our guys on a weekly basis. So every week, all of the guys are coming in and checking in with me, and I'm getting an opportunity to just talk to them, see how they're doing. The other thing too is when we're going throughout the season, the player schedules dictate a lot of what we do. I can't just pick a date and say, hey, I want to do practice at 1 p.m. If they have class during that time, we typically schedule anything around their class schedule. So their class schedule is going to come first, not our practice. So I had an example. I'll use an example. This year, I had a young man that had a class that went all the way to 2:30. We typically would practice at 2:30. So we pushed the practice back to make sure that he was incorporated in all of the practice sessions. And honestly, it doesn't matter what type of player it is. If he's competitive or helping us out, if he's a player on the team, we want to make sure we're looking out for all these guys. And in some cases, we may not be able to get everyone in there, but we try to do our best to make sure, yes, classes are first. We're making sure that these guys can get in those classes. And then obviously basketball is second.
Basketball players. Are you grinding in the gym but struggling to get noticed by college coaches? Your talent deserves the right exposure, and that's where Net Results Recruiting comes in. Whether you're in high school, junior college, or prep school, we help you connect with college programs, get you promoted to college coaches, and receive expert guidance throughout your recruitment journey. Don't leave your future to chance. Get exposure, get guidance, get results. Let our team find your team. Visit netresultsrecruiting.com today and take the next step towards your college basketball dream.